All right, all you Badass Clinician out there listening to this podcast. Today I have a great episode for you guys. A good friend of mine, Justin Rabinowitz, who is the owner of Strive to Move, but he's also a business coach for Rehab Chiro. He is really creating a new movement for all the chiropractor out there who just wants to do more than just snapping necks in a way, but actually introduce movement. So, I met Justin probably a year ago now, and he's a Jersey guy. I'm a Jersey guy. We run private practice, and we have similar philosophy and just love talking business with him. So I just need to get him on just to kind of share his passion. He had me on his podcast. We did some really great podcasts on that one. If you guys want to check it out, we'll link that in the show note. But hey, man, without further ado, Justin, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you. And it's called cracking necks and cashing checks. That's what we say in chiropractic.
There you go.
That's what we're not doing.
That's not what. Just change the whole new path. So let's talk about a little bit about you, right? Your journey from chiropractor to become private practice owner. How did that come about?
Yeah, and so knowing that most of your audience are PTs, what's interesting is we've always said the type of chiros like me, we call ourselves rehab chiros, that, if we came into this clinic and worked as a rehab chiro in your practice, Natty, clinically we would look very much the same. Mm-hmm. And so we often get from the other people, rehab chiros often get called like, why don't you just go to PT school? Mm-hmm. Which honestly sometimes is a compliment, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're doing a lot of the same stuff. So where you would call like a performance PT, we would call a rehab chiro. And so for me, athlete, like so many people, I had a back injury. I broke my back in high school. I had surgery actually in chiropractic school. And so I have that background of just knowing what it's like to be put through the ringer and all of that. But I think more than that, and potentially more relevant, was while I was in chiropractic school, chiropractic in general is a pretty entrepreneurial endeavor, meaning most people go into it like knowing that you're probably going to have to hang up a shingle and open up a practice, which in my experience now I've seen is a little bit different, right? When you go to PT school, you can get a job in a hospital or for a big chain. So there's an opportunity, there's more opportunity, which I think is a good thing in PT, to be able to work somewhere. Mm-hmm. The problem in chiro that I saw was essentially there was two sides of it. It seemed like when I was in school, you could either be the guy that snaps necks and cashes checks and run a good business, but the care that you were delivering was not what I wanted to do, not what someone that wants to do the rehab with a patient would do. Or you could be like, I guess, us and do the strength stuff, do the rehab, and do the thing that we believe is the best thing for the patient. The problem with that specifically in our profession is no one's figured out how to make a business out of it. Mm-hmm. And so like most of the time as a rule, the rehab chiros that spend more time with people, that do the rehab, that do the exercise, that do all of the clinical things that we want them to do, they're usually broke. At best, they're running a small solo practice. No one's figured out how to scale, but that's being generous, right? Mm-hmm. So going through school, I sort of understood this, and I always thought from day one, I started school in like 2009-ish, I think. It was like, I want to be able to do both. World-class clinical skills, world-class practice. And so from that time until today, now in different avenues, that's always been the tenet of what I've done, what we built at our practices, and then now what we teach other people to do. Mm-hmm.
Was there any practice like yours when you were in school?
Chiropractic-wise, no. There were people spending time with people. There were rehab docs out there doing it. But from what I saw, they were all like the guy, right? Mm-hmm. One-man show. Maybe they rented a room. Maybe they had something going on. But at most, it was them and maybe an admin. But nobody was running what you and I would look at as like a quote-unquote real business. Mm-hmm. No one figured out any sort of scale at all. So, a lot of what we're doing, and I tell our team now, is like we're kind of a new frontier a little bit. And I always encourage them, and I tell them, like, when you don't know what you're doing, when we don't know what's going on, that's good because no one's done it before. We're literally like carving a path out there to do something, to figure out how to grow and scale a rehab chiropractic practice. I haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we're similar in the same way where, like, again, both business model, very old school, mostly in-network, high volume, right? And I think the high volume is the necessity, or it could be greed, right? I think that's just part of it. When you were in school,
Can I just
Yeah,
just
go
to
ahead.
give you some perspective?
Yeah.
You know, in Chiro world, you're saying high volume. You would think as a PT, maybe that's 4 to 5 patients an hour, like that. In my world, in the high volume model, that's 10.
An hour.
Yes.
Holy.
Right. And so, and the reason why, and again, the clinicians here will appreciate this. In chiropractic, we have billing codes, obviously, and we can do rehab codes like you can do, but we have adjustment codes, meaning like a 98940 is an adjustment. An adjustment code is untimed, meaning that legally, like you can do an adjustment on someone 10, 11, 15, 20 an hour legally, right? Because it's untimed. So there are chiros out there that literally, and again, this is an extreme, but not that crazy, have an open bay. It's called an open bay for adjusting, and they have 5, 6, 7 rooms, tables, and they just go every 90 seconds from one to the next to the next to the next, and you will see people doing 50, 60, 80, 100, like that's a volume practice. And so the joint chiropractic, which we can talk about that later if we want, but
it's
that's
a franchise
franchise. I mean, those guys and girls that practice there, they see about 8 to 12 an hour. Like that's volume. Medicare reimburses, I think, for chiro adjustment about $30. So if you're going to make a business out of that, like you got to do the math. We always say with $300 an hour, so do the math.
Yeah, I think this is so funny you brought this up because I was talking to a buddy of mine who owns a successful CrossFit gym, and we were saying like there's something that can be true at the same time, but there's something that cannot, which is high volume, high quality. That cannot be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
So when you were in chiro school, what extent of business did they teach you?
It's another funny one because I hang out with people like you, and I'm in mastermind groups with mostly PTs, and chiros kind of think that they didn't learn business. PTs think that they didn't learn business, and both sides think that each other knows business, and neither knows business.
Yeah.
I think about it, right? And I try to be rational with my clients. They always, I didn't learn business in chiro school. I'm like, well, quite frankly, if you did, it would be bad because the people teaching you in chiro school are professors that either never wanted to be in private practice or failed in private practice. And so I'm not going to learn how to lose weight from someone that's heavy. Like that doesn't make sense. And so to answer your question, none really. Like I had some good professors, but they helped me graduate school and pass boards. Anything after that was on me. So none.
Yeah, and the matrix of success for school, for anyone that's listening, is their passing rate.
Exactly.
That's how they maintain their credential. They're not here to teach you how to run successful business. And like you said, if they were running successful business, you and I know how valuable our time can be. They wouldn't be a professor in the first place. It's really hard to do that.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but listen, I love business now and I'm so into it, but I was not a great student. And if someone came in like that, like you came to teach us business, I don't know if I would have been able to focus on it at that time because I just had to pass school and pass boards. Like I needed to get out of school, and maybe some other people are better than I am. And we actually have a student course and they are better than I was because they can do both. I couldn't at the time.
Yeah, but I think the student course you offer is specifically tailored to someone who actively seek out knowledge.
Sure.
Right, because now they have a clearer picture. Like you and I are similar, where we were kind of at the front of this new territory. Like we call it again performance therapy and all of that stuff, right? And you guys are Rehab Chiro, where back then a place like Myokinetics didn't exist. Like otherwise I wouldn't start it. I would have worked there.
Yeah.
Right, and the fact that when it does exist, it's only solo practitioner in a CrossFit gym with a table. And for me, like I did it out of necessity. And I didn't have any knowledge when it comes to business. I just knew that I just needed to make it work so I can pay bills. And then at some point, I'm just like, all right, what I wanted to ask you, at which point in your career where you realize like, well, this can actually be a thing. I can scale it, and I just need to go and seek out knowledge.
I think that, at what point did I realize it? I don't know if it was an active thought there. The active thought always for me was understanding who I was as a person from the start and then figuring out how to reverse engineer it to get there. And what I mean by that is I played sports my whole life. If I didn't do this, I'd probably be a college coach in baseball. I coached football. And so team was always so important to me. And in our world, when you open up a practice in a CrossFit gym and you put a table in there, like there's no team, it's you. You are the team. Mm-hmm. And so from day one, I always knew, I thought I knew the environment that I would thrive in, which was going to be to build a team. Mm-hmm. And so just based on that, I knew that's where I had to go. Now, when I opened the doors in 2015 by myself, well, it was just me, and it felt like forever. You know, I didn't really start hiring till 2017 and then 2019. And now we see today 12, 15 people coming and going with different businesses and business partners. And I feel, based on what I thought then, I think is true, where I do thrive in that environment. So it wasn't even as much of that. It was almost like where I was almost, if I was my own coach, I had to put myself in a position that I thought I could be successful, and that wasn't going to be the guy, be solo the whole time. And so I needed to be able to build something so that I could bring people on and build and grow the team.
Yeah. Let's just backtrack when you first started your practice, right, as a solo practitioner. Can you just share some of that experience? Because most of the people listening to here, they are probably thinking about starting their own thing, you know, creating their own path. Like, what were some of the challenges you have faced? What were some advice you can give the people?
The first piece of advice is that be careful with who you listen to. And also, when you listen to people, I would say be very careful of people that speak in absolutes, right? Because it's, you know, what I say or what I did is a way, not the way, right? Mm-hmm. You have an unbelievably huge, big facility here, which is beautiful, and you've been successful doing it. And we've done it out of 1,000 square feet, where we ran it out of a other person's office for a few years. Mm-hmm. It's a way, not the way. Because I hear people that say, they come on to calls with me and they say, oh, like someone told me you shouldn't open out of a gym because of X, Y, and Z. You need to go just get the office now. And then you hear someone else that say, no, it's too much overhead to take on a big lease. And it's like, neither one is true all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I think for me, like I one of the best skills to teach anyone is to have discernment in who you listen to and the advice that you've taken. Because just because I did it a certain way, which I can tell you how I did it, like that doesn't need to be everyone's experience. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that knowing your own situation, whether it's personal life, financial, whatever it is unique. Mm-hmm. And then kind of building it back from that and to determine what's going to work for you, I think is most important. And so what I mean by that is, you know, typically let's just say you did what you and I did and we open up very low overhead with a table in a gym. Like let's just $1,000 a month, and you need $5,000 to get started, and it's $1,000 a month of rent, right? Okay, that's a very, very small, low overhead model. What I find early on with business owners, the number one expense, always and forever, is going to be the money they need to take in order to live. Mm-hmm. If you, let's just say your spouse is rich and she can support you or whatever, has a good job, and you don't need to take money out of it, well, that changes the game a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we can make decisions based on that. But if you have a family, our friend Kevin Vandy, who's got a family of 5, his wife stays home, homeschools the kids, you have to make different decisions. Mm-hmm. And so what Kevin did or didn't do, and what Natty did or didn't do, and what I did is good to learn from, but it doesn't mean that's what you should do, right? And so I think more so than anything, it's having the discernment to listen to people as an observer and understand, but that doesn't mean that you should do this or you should definitely do that. It's always going to be personal based on your own situation.
Yeah, I love that, dude. I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. It's only Sith deal in absolute. So like when someone say absolute, like run away. I like that you point out is really the outcome that you want and the path to get the outcome. There's so many different paths. It's infinite. Really, like, you know, like you can pick up a table, you can go rent out space, you can do all this and that. But I had a conversation with Kevin Vandy last month, and it was the same thing. I put myself in his situation. I was like, dude, if I have 5 kids, I would have done the same thing as you. I would take affordable risks, and I think I did. I didn't jump in with both feet. I didn't burn any boats. I was working, you know, full-time, side hustle, part-time, and the side hustle got bigger. And then once I realized it's a thing, and then I jump in with both feet. Yeah.
But he even, I mean, I know, you know, his situation, he runs a skate lab, and I mean, it's amazing. I mean, he took out $100,000 loan to get going and different things. And he's made, I didn't take out any loan. I put money on an interest-free credit card, $5 or $6 grand. had my table from Chiro school and went to a bunch of gyms and whatever for like 6 months. I made, I don't know, 30 or 40 grand in those 6 months. And then there was my startup cost. Now, again, I'm not saying that everyone can or should do that, right? Like when I invest in a practice now, one of the things that I'm investing in typically is to cover the operator's living expenses. And so again, every situation is different.
Yeah. And let's talk about that, right? Because you and I did the same thing where we kind of maxed out our credit card, put $6,000 in there, but we also invest in more time, right? You going from gym to gym with different table, that's a lot more time, right? At that point, did you have any time allocation, right? Because most people listen to this, they figure they want to start their business, they want this work-life balance, they want, it's hard, right? They want to work when they want to work. They want to work 20 hours, make 6-figure, and then go on vacation for a month. How did you, determine how many hours you're putting in? And was there a limit to how many hours you're putting in? Because I can say that I did not.
Yeah.
I was working as many hours as I can.
Yeah.
Did you have any limitations? Because if I were to go back, I might have put some limitation on that, but I wonder, did you do the same?
No. So a couple things. The work-life balance thing I like to talk about because I think it's an interesting topic. And, now with the staff and a team and younger people coming on, I think it's a big sort of like quote unquote thing that people want.
Yeah.
And it's something that I try to educate our team on, not because I want them to be workaholics, but I'll give a good example, right? And so work-life balance, I think sometimes people think work-life balance is I'm going to work and I'm then going to live. And for a lot of people, as you and I know, especially around here, people that like make good money, like they hate, or they at least don't, they work to live. They make money. They just get out as fast as they can, and then they want to go live their life, right? And I prefer not to do that, right? And so I always talk about, like in our companies, and I encourage the audience, is like, I want to do meaningful work. Doesn't mean that's all I'm going to do, but it means that like right now I'm working and I love doing this. Like this is a pleasure for me to do this. I could go play golf right now if the weather was better, but I'd prefer to do this. And so I talked to my team because we just did an annual planning retreat for 3 days. And the first year that we did the annual planning, I said to them, listen, I know you don't know what this is. All you have to do, just trust me once. That we're going to do it. You'll come with me. And if we hate it, we're not going to do it again. But the reason we're doing it is because I believe that spending the time to reflect on the business, to see where you went, to see where you're going, to bond as a team is the way that we can create meaningful work. And so even though I do want you to have work-life balance, I want your work to be meaningful. And so because I don't believe that work and life are separate, it's all the same, right? I'm not living right now. I'm working, but it's very fulfilling for me to do this. And so I want my team to feel the same way. That like, Hannah, and when she started, she was amazing. But in the beginning, it was like, I think it was work-life balance. And now I think she's so enthusiastic and she feels like such purpose and she sees growth that it doesn't mean she's working 24 hours a day, but she's very willing to put the time in because she knows the impact she's having. She sees her own growth, and that's life. Like that's living to me. And so I encourage everyone out there just to kind of maybe think about what work-life balance actually means to you. The part of the story I didn't finish is for 3 years in a row, my team has asked to now do annual planning because of how meaningful it is to be able to do work that matters. And so I think that that's an important topic. And in my companies and when I teach other chiros now, my mission is now to create that. Like it doesn't need to be that. Now, on a more practical side, it doesn't matter if you want to work 20 hours a week, take a month off and do whatever. I think that's great. And if you want to work 50 hours a week and be a grinder and do all that, that's great. Well, guess what? The business principles and skills that you need are exactly the same, right? You need to run a good company with solid foundation, good principles. That's a profitable business if you want to take off for a month or if you want to grind 50 hours. So at the most basic level, no matter what you want, the answer for the most part is the same. Now, at some point, what we all want is choices. Most people don't have the choice. So you're talking about someone that wants to work 20 hours a week and go on vacation for a month. But most of the people, the paradox is most people that want that don't have that choice. And so if you build a business to get there, then if you want that choice, go do it, right? You did that this summer. You went away for a month and you realized after 10, you wanted to get back. But the point is you had the choice. most of the people that want that don't even have the choice. And that's the, am I allowed to curse?
Yeah.
That's the fuckery of it all.
Yeah. No, 100%, dude. I love the work-life balance thing because I believe that is meaningful life require meaningful work. And I was just reading an article. I forgot what it is. Maybe Entrepreneur Magazine. But they're talking about people like job hopping every 8 to 10 months or so. And to me, I think it comes with lack of purpose, lack of support, lack of vision of what they can do for themselves, right? If you are someone who's mission driven, I think to have a true purpose in life, you have to have your overall mission. You need to understand your whole core value. So everything that you do when you wake up, are you living on purpose, right? Are you doing something that you're supposed to do? Like, again, you and I, we're at the point where we don't need to come in. We don't need to do this and that. I choose to come in because I enjoy it. I love the conversation I get to have with my team. We had our 401k talk yesterday where we just got someone come in, talk about retirement. But the best part about that is I made sure the talk was about them taking control of their own finance. Mm-hmm. Like, don't look for me to take control of your finance. This is your life, dude. Take control of your life. And as part of having meaningful life is having on-purpose job. When you have on-purpose job, you can then take control of your own duty. You can take control of your own duty one step at a time. Next thing you know, your life is a little bit more vibrant because now when you wake up, a phone call is not just a phone call. A phone call is a purpose of helping someone, right? A marketing email is not just an email. Now it's an email that can help someone, right? You send out a good email, 10 people call. You indirectly are helping 10 people, right? Without knowing it. So I think there's a big misunderstanding when it comes to work-life balance. And I think due to, social media, TikTok, or like quiet quitting or whatever it is, to me, it's just resigning it anyways. I think people are just looking to have the grass is always greener on the other side mentality. But once they get there, it's the same thing. And if you're in this cycle, at some point you have to kind of look back, reflect, and say what am I not doing? Or what am I doing that's perpetuating the same cycle? Yeah,
I had a patient once. Well, no, I don't want to give it away, but he was a CEO of. It was a family business. CEO of a very, 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 very big company. Mm-hmm. About 10 years ago, private equity came and bought the whole thing, and he was out. And I met him about 8 years after that, and he was back in as the CEO. Mm. And I said, Bruce, what happened? He said, well, 2 things happened. The first one is I realized there was only so many rounds of golf I could play. And then the second thing that happened was, this is a business, he goes, the private equity company didn't realize that when you make a thing for $1, you have to sell it for $2. Mm-hmm. So they asked me to come back to kind of build the business back up. And so that's why I'm here. But the point is that the thing here, and I talked to a guy this morning who, he's like, yeah, I want to build my practice to eventually get a payout and get out of it. And I'm like, okay, and then what? You know what I mean? We kind of get to that point and oh, is that really what we're looking for? And again, I think going back to it, for me, it's one of the reasons why I feel so good about where I am right now is because I do want it to grow and I want it to get bigger, but at the same time, I'm so happy with where I'm at and so satisfied. So I want more, but I feel good, and I feel good that we've done what we've done so far, and I feel like it's a very cool place to be when you're excited about the future, but you're very content in the way it is now. Mm-hmm.
But I think you grow in different aspect of your life, right? Or different aspect of your business. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to grow the revenue, but you can always grow in profit margin. You can always grow in staff. You can grow in time less in clinical care and doing something else. The role I'm most excited about into 2023 is just coaching my staff. Now that I have less clinical time, I'm probably in the office more, right? I'm usually coming in. I used to come in 10, treat till around 6. But yesterday I was in 9, leave at 6. But all it is was FaceTime, talking to people, going over marketing strategies, all of that stuff. So it's way more meaningful. And I think it makes me really satisfied when I finish my day and I know that all right, the conversation I had with my team for an hour and a half changed their perspective a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I try to relate to them based on whatever pop cultural thing and then try to find some sort of parallels to teach them. We're talking about this whole Meghan Markle and Harry And I was just trying to teach them, like, listen, when you watch this, just try to figure out what the marketing message is,
Yeah,
right? Because there's propaganda behind it. What are they trying to really convey? And for me, just pointing that out, I think they can then go and look at it. And if you can see that in everything, in every show, the past election cycle has been great education of watching like all these ads, because people are spending millions of dollars. We can learn from it. And to me, that's very impactful. Now, you wrote a post last week, which I thought was fantastic. If you guys haven't seen it, go follow him on Instagram. It's a thread of common traits that he saw in his coaching clients that are doing well in a startup and heading in the direction they can scale their practice. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So my good friend and client and who you know as well, Jeremy, right? Jeremy Dinkin. I've used him as an example quite a bit because, he was one of the first people that trusted me enough to help him grow his business. And so I've been using him as the example, and I even teach a student course with him because he's had the results to prove it. And so two things. The first thing is it's interesting. So I got Jeremy and I got about 2 or 3 other people to start at the exact same time with me. And they all were in very similar positions, similar demographics, similar practice. Like everything was pretty much the same. So most of the advice I gave them was all the same. But what happened was that Jeremy had success a lot faster than the other people. The other people had success. It just took longer. And so the first trait was that I call it like getting dumber. Jeremy, and this is a compliment, he trusts me, which I appreciate. And so if I tell him to do something, he does it. And so if I say we need to raise our rates because this business model doesn't work, like, okay, he does it on Monday. Whereas someone else waited 6-9 months to make sure it was okay, right? And now they've lost 9 months of time, right? The next thing, like Jeremy, it's time to get an admin, right? Actually, I told him, Jeremy, you got 2 good candidates, hire both because one might quit. And guess what happened? One quit. But he did. He hired both. Right? Whereas again, someone else, same advice, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 12 months later. So number 1, speed, right? If you take something, you do it. A lot of the times, I hope maybe some of my prospective clients in coaching will listen to this. I put deadlines on things for people because I need them to make a decision, because I know that they have all of the information they're going to have. And by them sitting on it longer, it's not going to help them at all. So I'm trying to help them. You're either in or you're out. There's no more information that's going to be presented right now. You sitting on it for the next 3 weeks is not going to change it at all. You just need to make a decision, right? And Jeremy, fantastic at making decisions and going. So that's number 1, how fast you're going to make a decision. Number 2, how long are you willing to play the game, even when it's not that exciting, right? Even when it's not that exciting. So I'll give a timeline. I started with Jeremy August 2021. He had a McDonald's menu of options and choices, 36 things, prices where everything was all over the place. I was like, all right, we're going to shrink it down, take the prices up. It's like a system. Like there's 3 or 4 things we got to do. Simplify, raise prices, sell packages. Let's start tracking metrics. It sounds simple. Obviously, you and I know, not easy. So that was August, September, October, November, December. Let's just call that 4 or 5 months and just getting the shit ready to go. And then we get to 2022, January of 2022. And for the next 12 months, Jeremy did nothing else than execute on what we put in place. Our sales system that we teach, understanding objections, we have a system very much in place, tracking metrics and KPIs. We have a marketing system, boom, 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 very methodical. At the end of this year, Jeremy will be up $100,000 year on year of revenue. And when I asked him just the other day, I said, and I knew the answer, in the last 12 months, tell me what changed. And he said nothing. And that was the answer I was looking for. He just took what we did and he executed and he executed and he executed over and over and over again. And if he's able to do that time and time again over the next 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 20 years and continues to progress in that way, it's impossible that he's not going to be wildly successful. Now, scale, add staff, right? Add admin, add another Chiro. It's the same thing now, just with more people. But now, how long can he stick with it? The people that don't have success, that I've seen it, they get started, they're making $6,000 a month, and they're like, they're so whatever all over the place. They're going to another business, they're adding another service, they're doing all of this, and it's just like they have ADD and they can never stick to the thing. And so it's like they're trying to do 3 things before they do once. I had a conversation with a guy once. He was telling me about a 10-figure exit before he made $10,000 in a month. And I was like, man, like I appreciate what you're saying, but And so focus, right? To be able to, so taking action fast and then doing it longer than anyone else. And if you can do those 2 things, it isn't about how smart you are, right? It isn't about like, where you grew up. It isn't about how much money you had growing up. It isn't if your dad was a business owner. It's completely irrelevant. But if you can make this, if you find someone to listen to, you take their advice, and then you're willing to do it longer, even when it gets boring and it gets hard, it's very hard for you to not have success.
Yeah. So just to sum it up, speed of execution and just staying the course. I think there's what I love is I'm the same way where like if I pay someone, right, for coaching, I'm gonna listen. That's what I'm paying for, right? I'm not paying to argue with someone, right? If I know what I need to do, I don't need. Why would I look like I'll be in a better situation? Let's just say, right? So I appreciate.
Go ahead. I want to tell a quick story about like an example of this.
Yeah.
And so I posted it on my Instagram, so I'm happy to share the numbers of it. So we built this business. Now I do coaching, and I'm very proud of, like, one of the main things I'm proud of is our sales and communication system. Like I'm really proud of what we've done. And so here I am, this business coach, quote unquote guru, blah, 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 blah. September in my practice, I don't see patients anymore, but obviously I own the practice. September in our practice, we made like 20 grand. It was horrible. I lost so much money that month. And it wasn't because we didn't have the leads, it's because we didn't convert the people we needed to convert. So our sales process. So here I am like, what? Like I had the sales process, I coach people to do it, and our business is shit the bed. And so I yell about once a year I have a conversation. And it wasn't even, so I go in and I'm like, guys, listen, first of all, this is unacceptable. And I said, the thing that's the most unacceptable to me is that I know what's going on, and I know exactly how to fix it, and I know we're going to fix it because I trust the system and I trust you. My problem is you guys don't trust you yet. And so we went in, and every week we went back to the things that we knew we did, the basics, trusting the process, even when it didn't go well. We were missing on little things that we had done before. And so for the next 3-4 weeks, I had stepped out of training before that sales training. Well, I came back in. 2 months later, we tripled our revenue, right? Tripled our revenue. And what was different? We just did the shit that we knew we were supposed to in the first place. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't exciting, but it was going back to the basics and sticking to the course of knowing what got us here in the first place and not forgetting about that. And so no better example than that of like what has to happen. It's to go back to what got us here. And even if it gets boring, even if it's tiresome, even if you've heard it before, go back there.
Yeah. And I love this, and I appreciate it more, especially when, I grew up in a restaurant business, right? And people take pride in their recipe that's passed down from generation to generation. If you go to Carbo in New York City, very expensive restaurant, hard to get in, same recipe. They don't advertise that there's a new recipe for their chicken parm or whatever it is. No, it's been the same recipe for the past 100 years. And that's why people show up. So if it's been working for 100 years, system-wise, recipe-wise, why would you go and change it? Like, well, I think it's just boredom, right? Yes. So let's talk about this. So why do you think people get bored when things are working well?
I think part of it is, I think one thing we think that because we're bored, other people might be bored, right? And so like the new people coming into our practice as consumers, they've never heard it before. It's new to them. We've heard it before. And so we want to change it. Or I think oftentimes it's just like, how when you drive to work every day, you eventually stop like looking at the details. You just sort of know. And so, we've had many things in our practice, many times where, where when we were going well, it was, all right, here's our 3-step system, blah, blah, blah. And then we just magically start to forget one of the steps, right? And when we say we want to give people a choice, right? We do want to give people a choice on what they want, but we want to recommend what they need. So if you say, hey, do you want 9 or 12 sessions and nothing else with it, they're going to say 9. Of course, because they don't have any context, right? And I think a lot of times it's, again, I don't know why people get bored other than the fact that there's a lot that happens in our life. Is it distraction? Is it social media? Whatever it is. But we see the same thing over and over, and we do the same thing over and over, but I think sometimes we think everyone else does too, and it isn't like that. They don't know, right? People that come into our world, they've never heard it before. They've never seen it before. We often think we have to change it, I think, to keep ourselves entertained. And so I haven't officially coined it yet, but this is a preview. So my mastermind group that I have, the thing that I keep coming back to over and over is, this is not a fucking circus. We are not here to entertain you, right? So Jeremy called me once and he's like, I have this new employee. Like, I'm not sure, like, what do I do to keep them busy? I was like, you're not there to entertain them. This is not the game. Like, there are certain things they need to do, and you're not in the business. This is not like daycare, right? We have to have a system and a plan. We're not here to entertain them. I tell my people on our mastermind, I hope at some point our sales process, you're like, oh, I heard this before. I hope you have, right? I am not here to entertain you just to come up with something new so that you stay here. I'm here to get you results. And so you're a sports guy. You've got athletes here. Like, how many times we're not going to stop deadlifting after we learn how to deadlift. It doesn't work that way. And I think your audience will resonate with that, right? The basics are very, very good. There's nuance to them. We can do it. But listen, if you and I went to coach football tomorrow, we're going to block, we're going to tackle. I played baseball in college, right? I heard an interview once with the coach of Princeton, and they're like, well, how are you guys so good? He's like, because we remember that the key to the game is to catch the ball and throw the ball. And so we practice that a lot. And it's like, that's interesting. You know, novelty is cute, right? It's fun. But at some point, the discipline is not new. It's in doing the same thing better.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys watch The Last Dance, Jordan started out with chef's pass every single game. He's the best, dude. Like, he's not doing anything fancy. You know, he just come in like, all right, chef's pass, you know, just get it going. If the best, you know, one of the best athletes in the world doing the basic, you know, I think that's what you need to do. And just to kind of add to what you're saying, I think people have this silver bullet kind of mentality where if they just do the one thing, that would be a silver bullet that would then carry them to that $10 million exit. But you and I have read many books, talked to many successful business owners, have access to people who are still doing it, you know, like with 8 figures, you know, 9 figures and all of that stuff. And the craziest thing, what I've learned this year so far is that it's the same problem, same issue at larger scale, and principle is still the same. You still need people. You still need to do the basic really well, and you just got to go refine your system and keep people accountable to do the thing. I like what you say about your job's not to entertain your employees, right? I mean, when I hire anyone, we have a basic understanding like, hey, I am paying you for these particular role that you have to do for me. It's a fulfillment, right? I fulfill my duty when make sure you get paid, you do the same for me. Where in the beginning, when I used to hire people, I used to get so excited of their potential or what they could do. And I totally lost sight of like, no, I need them to do this now.
Yeah. I've been on a, speaking of this, S. Truett Cathy, the guy that founded Chick-fil-A. I've been on a Chick-fil-A kick of content, and they're the perfect example of that. Like, you can study them, 12-item menus, right? They used to rent out or still do rent out arenas to practice their process and how their delivery order, and they're more profitable than almost like, I think the stat is like Burger King, Subway, and McDonald's combined each location, because they do a very small amount of things better than anyone else.
Alex Mosey was talking about it.
Yeah, we just and I think I started there, and then I saw the book, and I was reading the book this morning. Very interesting.
I mean, you and I 6 months ago, we were texting back and forth which book to read, and I recommended you like Pizza King.
Yeah, I watched.
No, Pizza Tiger.
Yeah, I read that, and then I also got the guy that founded Walmart.
Yes, Made in America. I think there's a lot of clues that you can find in reading autobiography of great founders.
I just learned, you know what I learned, Natty, in those, that I think the only way to make it is to have our own plane. They all have their own plane.
They all have their own plane. Even like the guy
and
from
they fly it.
Yeah, they fly to survey the landscape of where they're gonna open their own stuff. I mean, that's the goal, man. Having our own plane.
And so the business lesson I took from that, and again, this might be useful for your audience. I share it all the time, specifically from the Walmart guy, right? The thing with him is that he knew the game he was playing, right? He was playing discount shopping, meaning that he was going to price his stuff so competitively that he had to sell so many more items in order to make money. And I don't know if this happens as much in the PT world. It probably does. But I find people that don't understand this, right? They want to be, they don't want to be Walmart. They want to be something different, but they don't want to charge the right price for it. And so they end up in the middle. And typically, the middle never wins. If you want to be Walmart, again, I respect that. That's totally fine. But you got to be the see 10 patients an hour, right? At the low price point. Or you have to be the other end like we are, the white glove service, high level, charge a lot of money for it. The problem is almost without fail, every person that I see, when they get to my world, I literally have a business because of this problem. They get caught in the middle. You know?
No, I got a great story to add to that. So JCPenney
Yeah.
started out at like a lower retail, right? So they below Macy's. And the main thing was selling on catalogs. People are buying it because it's much cheaper. It's served for a certain demographic, right? They attract that. And then as they got bigger and bigger, a new CEO come in, they say, no, we're not doing this anymore. Now we're going to go compete with Macy's and try to compete with Lord & Taylor. But that's a whole different category of people, different buying behaviors, different spending habits, right? Different language. So they try to apply what they did to a lower tier people with different spending habit, with an upper tier, upper middle class people, and it failed, like massively because they didn't get the message correctly. And rather than stick to the thing that they do well, they didn't. And that's why they fail. And going back to Walmart, what's great is that like Sam just stuck to his true, like, hey, we're going to be the cheapest. We're going to sell the highest volume. And his main thing was the fact he has his plane was like A, get the land, and B, to fly back and forth to all this manufacturer to negotiate a lower cost.
Yeah.
And they just keep doing that over and over again. And even the Domino's guy, the big thing with Domino's is the promise is that 15 minutes or less.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess going back to the other question, some of the traits that I've seen with people that I work with, the thing that I try to teach them actually based on those two books, and there's another one that I read by Sam Zell. He's like one of the best investors in the world. The three of those, when I went on vacation in September, I read all three of those books. And if you ask me what's the one thing, but for all three of those is that they didn't give a fuck about failure. Not one, right? They were like, so I think the quote in there with Sam Walton was he's so like bizarrely like he fails and he's like, all right, whatever, we're moving on. So he was so willing to try and to do things because a failure to him was not an indictment on him, right? It wasn't a failure in the business. It was a learning opportunity. Because they were willing to fail and unafraid of it, they were more likely to take chances or risk that was going to propel the business forward.
Yeah.
Which is another thing, and it's a cliche, the fear of failure, like with air quotes. But when you really look at and understand, you and I both know, right? Business a lot of times isn't about making good decisions, making less bad ones, risk mitigation, but in that, like, you have to be able to take some risk and not be so paralyzed by the fact that it might go wrong, right? Because all of this is like, in our world, right, it's like we don't get paid for how much we work. Like all of us probably work similar amount of hours. Yeah, maybe we put in more time. We don't get paid for that. We get paid for the risk we're willing to take and really how we rationalize and think about it, because if we do take a risk and it doesn't work, how can we rebound from that and be okay with the next one working or not working too? And
I think to go back to people inability to make quick decision is, I think it's probably deeper than just fear of failure. It's probably fear of looking bad, fear of being judged, and probably fear of not being good enough, right? Because most of the time, like you and I, we're human beings. We probably have the same capability, same thing to make the same decision. But at the end of the day, the only thing that holds us back was probably what's going on inside our brain, how we perceive ourselves. Like Tony Robbins talks about all the time, is like you need to feel significant in some way in order to take positive step towards the life that you want. But you don't feel significant, and therefore you're going to question everything.
Yeah, and I also think it's what we I don't know what the proper word is, but what we sort of measure up success with, so to speak, or like how we judge ourselves, which I think goes back into a lot of the sales stuff that we teach. I had a call yesterday with a guy, and I could tell he was like overwhelmed and on the fence and all that. And he goes, Justin, I really like you. And I go, hold on a second, man. Like, I just want to stop you there. Mm-hmm. I said, and I mean this as respectfully as I can. I promise you, whether you do my course or not, has no bearing on how I feel about myself. And you liking me or not liking me is completely irrelevant to this conversation. Now, is it better if you like me from a business standpoint? Yes, because you're more likely to do business with me. However, I promise, if you say no to the course, it's not going to impact me at all. It doesn't change me at all how I feel about myself. And I think that's so important, because so many of us, if we're going to be cash or we're going to ask people for money and someone says no, we immediately make an indictment about us and we feel bad. And so a lot of times we won't even make the ask, or we won't make the decision because we're afraid of how we will feel if it doesn't go well. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a level of, I hope, maturity or rationalization that we can get to and understand that, like, you know, listen, brother, whether you say yes or no, it doesn't impact me at all. And I had the conversation with this guy, and he starts smiling, and he's like, it's almost like no one's ever talked to him about that before. Because we immediately say, like, I like you, but I like you, but I'm not going to, okay, like, I don't care if you like me or not.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. And I said to him, I said, listen, I think my program is going to help you. If you don't do it, it doesn't matter to me. It's going to help you, not me. It's like, but again, I like you, but it's like, this is not relevant to the conversation. It's an apples and orange conversation. You liking me and your business growing, they're not, like, there's completely irrelevant. Church and state.
Yeah. No, I just wrote a post on this last night. What I say is unethical for us to recommend a potential patient to go to a clinic that would not provide them the care that they are looking for, and therefore would not get the outcome, all because we have discomfort in having a sales conversation, right? And it's all going back of us feeling how we feel about ourselves. I used to feel this way where, like, man, like, am I even good enough to charge this? And I started charging, like, with $40, dude.
Yeah.
And from there I was like, oh my God, it's too high, right? And then from there I go to 80. It's like, oh my God, it's too high, right? Every time we raise prices, we have this kind of moment. But at the end of the day, the one thing I learned was it's kind of rude to assume that those people are not value themselves enough to pay for their own health. Like, we had one kid, and I love this, college athlete. He's working 2 jobs to pay for the care with us. And I totally appreciate that, right? Because this is the kid that's trying to make it happen for himself so he can keep playing at a high level, have potential to make it in the league, right? And that I appreciate. But, you know, rarely the discomfort is about how we feel about ourselves, especially when it comes to sales, not when it has to do with the other person. At the end of the day, if the patient value, you know, better outcome in a faster rate and spending more time with the clinician, we're the right place. But if they value lower cost, then obviously we're not the right fit. And therefore they need to go somewhere else that is a better fit for them. But it's nothing personal, like you said, right? They don't know who I am. I don't know who they are. We just met. It's like speed dating.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of my favorite topics, so I could talk all day about it. The same gentleman asked a question. It was kind of along the lines of like, what do you think the price should be, or the value that I'm going to get, or something like, will I get value out of it? That was like the question. And I said to him, I said, listen, that's none of my business. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, my job is to show you why I think it might be valuable to you. But value is what you decide it is, right? I have gone to, I pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for one of the masterminds I'm in. And the value I get out of it most of the time is once a quarter, they have 3 speakers that come on, and I usually get one takeaway from that, and it's worth every dollar I paid. And so my job, if I'm selling something, is to create value proposition, so to speak. But then the consumer has to see it from their eyes if it's valuable to them. And so I told him, I said, I'm not that selfish. He's like, what do you mean? I said, I will not tell you what's valuable to you. You have to decide that. If you're happy with where you're at, then don't pay me any money because that's not valuable. But if you're not, then we have to do something to change the state that you're in or the business that you have. But I will not ascribe value to what you think, right? Some people think driving a BMW is valuable. I think it's dumb. Mm-hmm. It's not my business to decide on what you want to drive. Mm-hmm. That's not valuable. That's not useful. That's selfish, mm-hmm. right? Because I always think the best salespeople in the world, going back to your example, they're selfless. Mm-hmm. It's not about if Natty thinks $40 is expensive, it doesn't matter, right? Does Sally think that $40 is valuable to her? And if we understand that, right? If we understand that the best people in the world at sales, whether it's clinical, whether it's business, whether it's photography, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. If they understand that ascribing value for someone else is absolutely the most selfish thing you can do, mm-hmm. you've got a shot to have a real conversation and have some success in the business that you choose.
Yeah. And I think it's going back to, self-confident, clinical confidence in what is it that in your craft, right? I always encourage other clinicians to kind of go out there and go get PT from other places, just to kind of see like where your skill set matching up to other places, and not to like blow yourself up as like, oh, I'm better than these people. The conversation is between you and you of like, oh, well, these are people doing this, they're charging this much, and I'm not doing anything different. So why am I not charging just as much? I'm doing the same thing. So if they couldn't do, why not me, right? That's always me. And before I built my practice, and when I was still renting space in a CrossFit gym, I traveled to so many different states, visit all this like high-end performance center with PT in it and all this thing, just to spend more time to see what are they doing that I'm not doing. And then 80% of the times, we're doing the exact same thing.
Oh, for sure.
But they just charging a higher price, the experience a little bit different, the environment just a little bit different. And then because I did that, I came back with permission, giving myself permission, like, all right, great. Now you can charge this because people are charging it.
Yeah, we're speaking the same language. It's funny. I had he's in our group now. I did an intro call with him about 6 months ago, and he was just opening up his own practice in Long Island. And like so many times, it's like whatever his fee structure was going to be. And I just asked because it's entertaining, like, how'd you come to that number? And he's like, well, I know that this guy down the street, Jake, who's a client of mine too, and my friend, he charges this, and I haven't been in business as long as him, and this. And he gave all these rational reasons to charge less. And I was like, all right, listen. I said, you're not going to sign up with me today. He's like, what do you mean? Mm-hmm. I said, my assignment for you in the next 2 weeks is to go to Jake's practice for a day. And what I want you to do is just go there and be a fly on the wall. And when you leave there, we're going to set up another call. And what I want you to tell me is the things that Jake is doing, which he's doing a great job, by the way. I just want you to look me in the eye and tell me that whatever you're going to do is not going to be worth the same that he's going to charge, in your opinion. Mm-hmm. That was the assignment. 2 weeks later, I get on a call. We all know what happened. Thank you so much. I appreciate you sending me to Jake. Jake's great. He does an amazing job. But what I realized that day was he and I are doing basically the same thing. And so I'm going to set my prices where they're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Long story short, the guy's now started his practice. He's had wild success in the first 3 to 6 months. The guy's a baller. We call him Gucci Fucci. That's how good he is. He's awesome. But it was just that, exactly what you said, right? I just needed him to see it. I could tell him, but I needed him to see it. That it's like, all right, he's good, but I'm doing the same thing. I might as well just do that. He just needed permission.
Yeah. And like you and I have been in masterminds, and that's how we grew our practice, expanded our thinking. When I first got into Russell Brunson Inner Circle, you're the first person that I talked to, and you asked me the question, like, all right, dude, like what made you come to that conclusion? Yeah. Why did you decide to drop $50K on this thing? And for me, it was like, hey, I just need to see what other people are thinking, and how can I think like them?
Yeah.
And that was like the best thing, right? We had one event there already in Boise. Even the pre-day before we even got into like the main day, just going to get food with people, I told my wife, like, I can come home right now. It's good. Yeah. Like, I don't need to show up again.
Yeah, it's funny. When you and I talked, I remember leaving that conversation, and it was such a good lesson for me to learn. And I'll never forget it, because so many times, like, and people ask me this all the time, the tactical, even if they're going to come to one of my events, let's say, or join my event, what am I going to get for it? Like, and they want like, oh, you're going to get this script and that script and this and that and that. And I remember leaving that conversation with you and thinking, and this is a positive, he doesn't even know why he's there right now other than the people that he wants to meet. And that was why you were going, because there were people there that you just wanted to talk to. It wasn't, you didn't even have like I need to learn this, or this is the business I'm starting, or this, that, and the other. Like I could tell you weren't there. You were just like, I trust myself enough that if I just get around the right people, it's going to be worth it for me. And that was such an interesting lesson because, again, when people try to ascribe value, what am I going to get? Like, that's not a common thought process. Like, I want to learn Russell Brunson's ClickFunnels script. That would have been like I'm going to pay $50K and the return is going to be $200 because of X, Y, and Z. And in your brain, in my opinion, as I heard it, it wasn't like that. It was such a higher level principle.
Dude, it was crazy. It was the first time ever in my life where I was sitting in a room. There was like 130 of us. And I just did a quick math based on like people revenue, the requirement you need to get, because you need to have minimum 7 figures business. There's different tier up inner circle. It was easily over $150 million in that one room.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, where else? Like where else am I going to sit in a room and have that access to the people, right? And then, like I said, like just...
The only room I sat in with that was when I was working in professional baseball, and I looked around one day. I was like, there are $750 million of contracts in here, but I can't be like them because I can't hit the ball that far. I have to probably do it in business.
Yeah. So it's just so cool, man. Just to have a conversation with people. And, you know, you and I we obviously love Alex Hormozi. We talk about this all the time. And the one thing he always come back to was, what are they seeing when it comes to their reality, their perception of reality that I'm not seeing? Because we're seeing the same thing, right? You and I can look at this bottle and say, oh, you know, it's blue, it's you know, Tiffany blue, that's for me. If I'm gonna be bougie, you might say blue, right? But it's all different perspective, and that's what I'm trying to do. But it's different perspective on hardship in life, because background as a Buddhist, life is all about suffering. Business is literally suffering time too, on top of life, and these people are able to see the silver lining in the suffering so much better than I have, and draw so many lessons from it, and then execute in such a way faster speed. Like, so what can I do to think like them?
Yeah. You know, I like it. And I think we assign meaning in the way that, you know, we sort of see fit. Even in my coaching program, I've run into a recent good problem in that I'm actually getting, I guess, like more advanced business owners calling me. And it's interesting because their perception is that they might be too advanced for like what like we are doing in our group. Mm-hmm. And it's a new conversation for me because I look at their business, and maybe in certain aspects, revenue, time, and business, they are, and their perspective, I believe, is actually warped. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many holes in it. But they don't see that. They just see like, oh, I'm making more money than this guy, and so I'm more advanced. And it's a very interesting lesson that I've learned on perspective and sort of how I view things, or the reality that I'm living in. The reality that they're living in is something is low level, so to speak, and what the reality I'm living in is you don't even have the low level fundamentals to build it to where you want it to go. Mm-hmm. And that is all just a perspective conversation on what the reality we're living in is.
Yeah, I had a really good conversation with our friend last night, Jerry, and we were talking about how it doesn't take much to get to a certain revenue, like let's say 7 figure, because everyone wants to hit it. If you just stay in business long enough and have your brand compound, you will get there. But if you attach yourself with that revenue, that's when you stop learning, right? Because then you have that like, oh, I made it mentality. Oh, you can't teach me anything else I didn't know. I've done it. And as soon as you get to that point, I think as a business owner, that's when you literally start dying, because you force stop your own evolution, right? You're no longer, you just literally, I mean, I tell my wife this, I say I would not retire because I need my brain to work like all the time, right? If I stop working, my brain's not stimulating, and that's when I'll probably get dementia. Like I don't want that, right? So I think as soon as you force stop your growth because you have reached a certain success, that's when your business start dying. That's when you start losing purpose, and that's when you get bored and you start doing some dumb shit, and then next thing you know, you're back in the shitter again. But again, sometimes people do that just to create drama. Like we all create our own drama, so then that way we can go in and solve the problem ourselves, give a little excitement, and then rather than just being content like where you are right now at the place you're at, and then just focus on the little things and just keep doing the little thing and just make it better.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you were in my sales conversation this morning about this guy trying to take my course. And I didn't say this to him directly, but I was thinking like there was an air about his like thought process that was not, I don't want to say arrogant, but he was almost like too good for it. And he's like, I don't know about taking your course. And at some point I said to him, I don't think I would let you buy it right now. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, honestly, like there's an air about you that you sort of have it figured out, but I'm looking at your business and there's not much here. And so if you're kind of like the self-awareness is so lacking in that, I don't know if I want you here because this seems just odd. Like you're making under 6 figures a year in your year of business, but you're telling me all the things you do well and why you don't need X, Y, and Z. And it just seems there's something missing here. And I don't want that to turn into, oh, Justin's course is too low level for me because like I know people that have been in business for 6 months that are doing better than you are. And you think you have all these things figured out and you don't. Like it's weird.
Yeah, I think, again, I've seen this, dude. I've seen people who pay for coaching and they always go back like, this is too basic. But it's the basic that gets you through. And, like in here, we have a conversation, especially for our clinical team. It's like we do the basic thing uncommonly well. And that's what we teach people, right? Before I teach anyone sprinting mechanics, I got to see how they walk. Like you're not rotating while you're walking. You're not going to rotate while you're sprinting. So I think people, you're facing with this problem. People just book a call to justify why they don't need help because they're doing well and to justify that the problem they have is uniquely theirs because of the situation they're in, the town they're in,
all the time.
They're this and that. Like, I was like, well, if you want to, again, both our mentor would say this, right? If that were the case, why do you want to be right?
Yeah. It's guy in Kansas, some part of Virginia, all like, I'm not in South Florida. I can't, I'm okay. Like, I think at the end of the day, as I teach people, there's a lot of really shitty things about being a business owner and entrepreneur. Like, but the one thing you do have is you have control if you take it. And so when people start saying the economy and unemployment and I'm in this town and my business and this like whatever, all of a sudden it's like, how many things can we get out of our own control? What about if we just said one time, for God's sakes, if we said, you know what, there are some things that are out of my control, but my God, I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, and I can take this thing by the balls, and here's the things I can control. Rather than just getting on a call and telling me everything that, because you're in Kansas, or you're not in South Florida, or you don't want to do this, or the economy is bad, or you have this, or you have that. What about if you just said, here are the things that I need to fix on myself? What about if we just started there? No one does, because no one wants to.
Yeah, man. With my 1 month of traveling, I've learned so much, right? I went to the UK. I see how people are treating. I see how much they're charging. And they don't charge as high as us just because of conversion and all of that stuff. But they're still $1 million business, right? They just do things differently. They are so relentless in their follow-up, man, that as soon as I came back, I was like, we need to follow up with people even more aggressive. And not in a bad way, not in like a nagging telemarket way, but always giving value, giving excuse to call people, right? And I took away from that. And as I went through Greece, we talked about this, where the whole country is bankrupt. But then if I'm at a nice part, there are mansions everywhere. Oh, yeah. So there are people who are making it. What are they, like those people, they're thinking differently. They're in the same circumstances at some point. And then most of all their autobiographies that you and I are reading, they all started from nothing. And chances are they're much older than where we are. Right? Look at the founder of McDonald's. He was in his 50s. Sam Warren was probably in his 50s, right? When they started this, but then they just keep scaling it. Yeah. So like, what I'm trying to do, whatever my limiting beliefs are, I try to find a resource to debunk that limiting beliefs, right? And I just read things to change my perspective so that way, like, all right, great. The age thing it's not a thing, right? The biggest thing I had to overcome the past 2 years was, speaking out more, work on my public speaking, hire a public speaking coach, just because it's important for me to communicate my message, especially being a business owner. And in my head, I was like, well, I'm an immigrant. It's hard. English is my second language. How am I going to speak? And better yet, how am I going to write a book? And I was just like, all right, let me follow some people who are just like me that have written many books. And then as soon as I started listening to content, I was like, oh, well, then writing a book is easy.
Yeah. Yeah, the label thing, right? You know, on my mastermind calls, as soon as someone like gives themselves a label, I'm like, stop, nope, no, we're not doing this, right? And here's why. So yesterday it was a good example for a clinician, right? It's great. So we do a positive focus, and this guy Colton doing great. He's in San Diego. Positive focus. Well, so I started being more consistent with social media again, and I've gotten a couple more leads from it already. The next part of the sentence. I had stopped doing social media last quarter because, you know, I'm a little lazy and all this. I said, stop. I said, hold on a second. Colton, you're not lazy. Mm-hmm. You got busy in your practice and all of a sudden didn't have the same amount of time that you had before. And because of that, you stopped doing social media. Mm-hmm. You're not lazy. You just ran into the same thing that every business owner runs into. Those are not the same thing. Now, that doesn't mean we just throw our hands up. We better have a plan, whether it's hiring or whether it's blocking time out, or whatever the case may be. But if you say something enough times, you're going to believe it, right? And so I'm a this. I didn't learn business. My parents aren't business owners. I grew up poor. I'm an immigrant. I'm a this. I'm a that. I'm lazy. I'm work life. Whatever it is. If you just keep telling yourself you're that, it's going to be true.
Yeah,
it's going to be true.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. No matter what you say. I mean, we all read Napoleon Hill, right? Think and Go Rich. It's all. That's all it is. Subconscious. What you say. The voice that you have in your head is way more impactful than anything that anyone can tell you. Right. You know, is how you identify with those voices. And if you can change the voice inside your head, I think you change the outcome.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's like, and I think one of the realizations people have when they become a business owner, you know, I always tell people, you know, we usually work at a job and we hate our job and we hate our boss so much that we leave and start our own company. And the only issue is we end up hating our new boss worse than our old boss because it's ourselves. Mm-hmm. The problem now is that we don't have anyone to blame, though sometimes we try to find someone to blame. Mm-hmm. We can only blame ourselves. And so my lesson to people out there that open their own practice is oftentimes like, do not leave a bad job with a bad boss and inherit a worse job with a worse boss, yourself and your own business.
Yeah, I love that. That's straight fire. And what I love about being a business owner is that it's all 100% accountability and it's all fall on me, right? I think there's something liberating about that. Like, it's extreme ownership where, like, if something bad happened, no, that's me. Something good happened, it's me plus the team, sure. Right? But most of the time, because I get to make decision when something bad happened, that's like, I can say like, guys, that was on me. What can we learn from it? And I love that, dude. Like, I wouldn't trade that for the world because I get to wake up every day and be like, hey, this day is in my control, right? 99% of the time. Like, if someone hit my car, I can't control that. Yeah. Like, I can't get upset. Like, traffic will always be traffic. We're in New Jersey, right? We can't get upset about that. When we have snow day, can't get upset about it. You know, and that's what I love. And I try to draw as many life lessons as possible from business. And then whatever I learn from life, I try to apply to business, which makes each day a little bit more fun and a little bit more vibrant.
For sure. No, I love it.
Yeah. So listen, man, I want to say thank you so much for your time. This has been probably like one of the best conversations we have like on the podcast yet. And I hope you guys really enjoy.
You tell that to everybody.
No.
It's like with my daughter. Everyone's like, oh, she's the cutest baby I've ever seen. You told that to the other
Yeah, it's great, man. I would love to have more of this conversation. I think it's super high level. I hope you guys listen to this multiple times just because Justin is a fantastic business owner, and obviously he run a great mastermind program. So, you know, in a way, you guys can Venmo me for some advice that he gave out, and you don't have to pay for it yet for his coaching. But where can people find you, dude?
Instagram's probably the best spot at my name, Justin Rabinowitz, which I'm sure you'll link to. At this point, it's just all kind of business and everything we talked about today. I put it on there.
Yeah, so before we let you go, I know you have some events coming up. Do you want to throw a little plug in there? Is there any extra tickets people can get?
Yeah, we have a couple guest passes left. We're doing an event in Fort Lauderdale where we have a very special guest, which we haven't announced yet. Basically, it's our mastermind event where we do have guest passes, and essentially everyone is themed on a certain topic. And the first one we did was on all marketing. The second one is going to be all sales and communication. And so we have a very specific sales process that we use now, which has allowed us to go from $60 cash to now $300, and people are paying between $4,000 and $5,000 for plans of care with us, which I don't say to brag, just to kind of let you know it's possible with having a plan in place. And so if you're a chiro PT, whatever you're doing out there, and you're wondering how you can kind of treat people the way you want in a performance setting, we all know that it needs to be communicated in a certain way, or else they're going to end up at the big box in-network place. And so this event in January 22nd and 23rd in Fort Lauderdale is going to be 2 days of exactly that, sales and communication. Sales and communication. I talked about before how we kind of tripled our revenue in 60 days, basically, all with just, we didn't get any more leads. It was sales and communication. And just as a preview, one of the modules that I'm going to teach there is the details of exactly what went into that. And so it's something that I'm probably in my business coaching the most proud of, is what we've developed from a sales perspective and the system that we have: ethical, empathetic, asking the right questions, not sleazy. And so I'm really proud of it. And so this event, if you're interested in that, shoot me a message on Instagram, or you can coaching at strivetomove.com. We have I don't know, when is it coming out?
Next week.
All right. So I will keep one of my guest passes available for that. So if you hear this next week and you get on it, shoot me an email, give you the details, and hope to see you there.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time.
Yep. Thanks.